This week, we talk about the aftermath of SolarWinds, Zoom's platform play, digital transformation data, Slack's launch, then unlaunch of Connect, hackers going to jail, back to the office data, and at least one law just disappears. That and more. Hit that like and subscribe button, and let's recap this week in the business of tech. Microsoft has begun reopening their headquarters. March 29th is the limited reopening of their offices in Redmond and Seattle. The company has outlined a 6-stage reopening plan, of which this is stage 4. According to data from Castle Systems, which operates security for thousands of buildings across the country, office occupancy is just 25% in 10 major cities across the country for the week of March 15th. The differences are due to coronavirus response measures, with Houston, Dallas, and Austin with the highest occupancy levels, while San Francisco and New York report the lowest. So, should you return to the office? Per a 2015 study of a workplace in China, teleworkers were 13% more productive and half as likely to get promoted. Now, why do we care? Unlike the rush to work from home, the move back to the office will happen at different paces on different timetables. The more important question is posed by the Axios article I pulled that study from. Should you? This will be the key question for employers and employees, and that's the reason we care. Those addressing the should or why of returning to the office, which will be including those more hybrid employees, will be the top performers. It's one thing to make sure the tech works. It's the more valuable service to ensure it's delivering well. Synnex and Tech Data are merging. Synnex and Tech Data will create the world's largest IT distributor through that merger, coming in nearly $10 billion larger than Ingram Micro, which had $47.2 billion in sales in 2019. The merger is expected to close in the second half of this year and generate $100 million of optimization and synergy benefits in the first year after closing, and some $200 million by the end of the second year. Now, why do we care? I wonder a bit if we do. In the world of IT services, we'll be going from the big 4 distributors to the big 3. In markets, we often debate this idea of market consolidation. I've generally argued that for a market, it's only really consolidation when a handful of companies make up the majority of the players. For example, when talking about IT services companies, the M&A activity we see now for MSPs and even software vendors, it isn't consolidation because there are so many players. However, with a small handful of distributors in the market, this is my definition of consolidation. Nothing is different today from yesterday tactically, so let's not overblow the importance. Distribution is a particularly hard space, and a more mature one. Less players is likely not hugely impactful, but it's at least noteworthy. Let's update quickly on the SolarWinds and Active Directory/M365 compromise. The new name is courtesy of CISA, who has released a tool to detect signs of compromise within Microsoft 365 and Azure environments. Congress has given the Commerce, Energy, HHS, and EPA departments 10 days to answer key questions about the attacks on their networks. And in a feel-good turnaround story, a Swiss cybersecurity firm claims to have accessed servers used by one of the hacking groups involved in the breach. They indicate that hackers have continued their campaign throughout this month. Quoting Bloomberg, Podraft researchers said they were able to break into the hackers' computer infrastructure and review evidence of a massive campaign between August and March. Podraft said the hackers were an extremely well-organized cyber espionage group with 4 teams named 301, 302, 303, and 304 responsible for breaching their victims' computers. The hackers placed emphasis on targeting governments and large corporations, such as Fortune 500 enterprise companies, according to the report. Now, why do we care? Feels good to see them get breached back. Small victories. And likely more informative over time. While not something to care about instantly, this is more investigative progress. We'll continue to learn here. Today's reasons to care include being more accurate with the name description. We've already noted that the incident is larger than just SolarWinds. Giving it a more accurate name is important. Just speculating? Will we move to naming like hurricanes? That could be telling. Digital transformation. I so hate the term, but there's data, and I can't resist that. Plus, while the term is awful, there's lessons here. More than 2/3 of CIOs believe that they will become more influential in the process of corporate or IT innovation, and 63% believe they will be more influential with workers, according to a Constellation Research survey of 100 leading CIOs. But maybe all these tools aren't working. Logi Analytics 2020 State of Analytics, Why Users Demand Better, survey showed that knowledge workers spend more than 5 hours a day in analytics, and more than 99% consider analytics very to extremely valuable when making critical decisions. Unfortunately, many are dissatisfied with their current tools due to the loss of productivity, multiple sources of truth, and the lack of integration with their current tools and systems. Oh, and adoption rates are still below 30%. NTT says the same thing. Only 22.7% of digital transformation efforts in Asia Pacific are optimized, according to that research. NTT has released its 2021 Global Managed Services Report, which found that 1 year since the onset of the pandemic, organizations globally have undergone major transformations as they seek to strengthen resilience, increase agility, and deliver greater efficiencies. In Asia-Pac, 89.7% of businesses and IT leaders agree COVID-19 has caused significant changes to their operating processes, while 91.8% say it has already accelerated their digital transformation strategy. Globally, about 70% of operations teams believe the need for a technology strategy that drives business efficiency opportunities is crucial, yet only 48% of IT teams agree. Further, about 70% of ops teams generally consider speed and agility a key component of technology strategy, in contrast to only 53% of IT teams. And let's tell an SMB-focused story too. TechIsle is reporting research that 37% of small businesses and 46% of mid-market firms did accelerate their efforts, but 27% of small companies prioritized other things and slowed down digital transformation. In the research, 17% of SMBs are restructuring their entire organizations, and 24% are creating new functions around digital transformation. That gets larger as the organization increases in size. And so we ask, why? Well, 78% of consumers now prefer to use online or mobile payments instead of payments in person. Now, why do we care? It's the story. Working backwards here, customers and consumers both want to use digital means. They want higher level of service and they want a more holistic customer experience. The bigger the company, the more likely they are to be investing there. IT teams themselves may be disconnected from the business priorities of their companies. Those same teams appear not to be delivering value from the tools they've deployed. The business wants these analytics, but aren't necessarily getting them. Those IT leaders, however, believe they're part of the solution. This all sounds easy. Be the groups that deliver on the promise of technology. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. The good news is that those who can are high value, and thus high profit. Zoom has expanded their partner program and launched an SDK. The SDK allows Zoom video services to be embedded inside other applications. Quoting TechCrunch, the company envisions application developers embedding video in social, gaming, or retail applications, where including video could enhance the user experience. For example, a shop owner could show different outfits to an online shopper in a live video feed and discuss their tastes in real time. Meanwhile, the company has expanded its global channel partner program and referral program, allowing for increased revenue on deals with their phone systems and a simplified commission structure. Now, why do we care? The platform play. Zoom really is pushing to be a platform for video and letting people build businesses on top of that. My theory remains that service providers in the future are up in the business layer as their future. I can easily see services companies deploying and creating these applications as outlined in the example. When Zoom describes what a developer can do, what they're leaving out is the selling of that solution to that shop owner. That's where the service provider comes in to understand the business and apply technology. And it's why we care. Slack is now letting users direct message each other. Slack Connect DMs allow users to privately message employees outside of their company. This is available today for paid users and will be rolled out to all teams, including free users, soon. The intention is to work with your customers and partners more easily across Slack groups. Beyond that, users and companies can create private business networks. Of note, each company controls its own privacy rules and data retention, as each company controls its own messages. A shared channel is actually two separately owned spaces glued together. Either side's admins can control their messages without touching the other side. Now, why do we care? So I have an affinity for Slack over Teams, and it comes down to being on my own. Teams is pretty awkward for those not inside an organization, says someone not on the inside of any organization. That's a sample set of one for sure. An interconnected network of companies where each can control their data, yet dynamically connect, is a pretty great promise. I've been making arguments that the value of IT services is at this business layer, and you can see all the work here. Applying those rules and policies, moving data into the systems, enabling, configuring, and using the various connected apps, all useful services offerings that customers will want and need. We're interested in what's happening at this layer of products for that reason. A new alliance with Google and Microsoft, joining with companies like Igalia and the broader web community. Why? To improve compatibility across web browsers. Called Compat 2021, the focus is on CSS Flexbox, CSS Grid, CSS Sticky Positioning, the CSS Aspect Ratio property, and CSS Transforms. CSS Flexbox is a very widely used feature, but it can cause images to be stretched incorrectly in different browsers. It was chosen because it's a top issue in the MDN Browser Compatibility Report for 2020, in addition to being the most widely used and known feature in the State of CSS report. Currently, 85% of browsers pass the test for the feature, and it appears in 75% of page loads on Chrome. The effort comes after a period of research, including surveys conducted by the Mozilla Developer Network and other sources of information, such as the State of CES and State of JS surveys, the most search features on Can I Use, and test results from web platform tests, all playing a part to determine the areas of focus for this effort. So why do we care? For all the promise of the open web, we still struggle with this cross-compatibility. I'd like to see this actually delivered on for sure. Hidden here is the fact that Google and Microsoft are actually using the same core Chrome codebase for their browsers. It's pretty easy for them to align because of that. We need Mozilla and Apple to play ball too. So we care because we want it, and we're skeptical here because not all the players are at the table. Want to ask, why do we care? T-shirts, stickers, water bottles, and even aprons. Pick up some of our great stuff at the link in the description below and support the show directly. I talk about broadband all the time. The FCC is now wondering what you think too. They've launched a form you can fill in to help the FCC understand problems. The form they've posted is supposedly a first step to a more detailed and specific reporting tool. This broadband task force wants to hear from you. Now, why do we care? As much as I've talked about the new regulatory push on broadband, here's your chance to speak up for your community. Have areas poorly served? Have struggles with getting customers connected? You know the spots. It's hard to complain later when you ignore the opportunity now. I would expect this audience of IT services companies to have some of the best insights into communities where broadband is a problem. Go forth and comment. So yesterday I talked about Slack's new Connect option, and I classified it as a business strategy story. Today, let's talk about it as a security story. Why? Well, it's got a ton of problems that allow for harassment. The feature has been rolled back because the way email invitations are being sent could be used to send harassing or abusive messages. That includes sending foul language and the inability to block those emails or make them ever stop. A user can't filter for them, and if you're in a free Slack, you can never remove them. Now, why do we care? Well, that's not great. My statements yesterday about the why all stand, and now we get to ask the question, why didn't they think of this? I pose this thought often. Why aren't companies considering how things can go badly? I call it the Black Mirror test. Assume your technology is going to appear on the show, twisted and abused by creative science fiction writers. I could dial up the snark and say, this is called testing, people. Long term, the direction is clear for this. Short term, proceed with caution. Employees might go back to the office, but not 5 days a week, Microsoft researchers found. Over 70% of workers want flexible remote work options to continue, while over 65% are craving more in-person time with their teams. To prepare, 66% of business decision makers are considering redesigning physical spaces to better accommodate hybrid work environments. The data is clear. Extreme flexibility and hybrid work will define the post-pandemic workplace. And putting some perspective here, Atlassian says they have added a quarter of their entire workforce during the pandemic, which means they have never been to an office. I'm also highlighting a longer read by Recode, which focuses on the 10 ways that the office will never be the same. One item from it, how productivity is being measured, will change. Where before people were evaluated by aptitude, attitude, and attendance, without those on a daily basis, it's measured by output. And that's not just the raw amount, but the outcomes. Now, why do we care? I keep hitting the work from anywhere and change to the office as a theme because there's both so much to learn and so much to implement. If technology enables this new way of working, then the IT services companies implementing it are the key to making those implementations successful. Thus, we care to be experts in effective use of the technology, which is so much more than knowing what button to hit. How will the space be used? How will culture be built? Where to use AI and where to use people? How do you effectively bridge communities and populations that are diverse? Hard questions to be sure, but all the profitable ones to solve. There won't be a single answer either, which makes this artisanal, not purely technological. I rather like a good conviction story for cybercrime. An IT consultant hacked a company in California and deleted almost all of its Microsoft 365 accounts as an act of revenge. The company was shut down for 2 days as more than 1,200 accounts were removed. The consultant was pulled from a migration project after customer complaints in January 2018 and sacked in early May. He then hacked into the customer on August 8th. He's now been sentenced to 2 years in prison and 3 years of supervised release and paying over $500,000 in damages to the company he sabotaged, which represents the bills paid to recover the damage. Now, why do we care? I keep saying it. It takes a while when the consequences come, but they do come. This is 3 years later. The story doesn't dig into the how of the breach, so let's assume all was done correctly, and this was an active breach. We care here from the lesson about how this would be prosecuted. In order to prove this, the company would need all of the forensics and evidence to present in court. This would require coordination with law enforcement to ensure that evidence is properly handled and acquired. It would require coordination with the prosecutors to make it happen. And so I ask, do most IT services companies have the expertise ready to handle this scenario? I've asked before, do you even have the process to call the FBI documented? If not, I've just assigned you homework. This is expertise well beyond just the technical, and if the statement is true that it's just a matter of time until the breach, it's true you'll need this process. So how's that enterprise cloud spending looking? Bigger than the amount on data centers, and significantly so, which has happened for the first time in 2020. The cloud and data markets were almost equal in 2019. Cloud infrastructure services grew by 35% from 2019 to 2020, totaling $130 billion, while data center spend decreased 6% to $89 billion. Synergy Research Group, who released the data, credits the COVID-19 pandemic with fueling the growth of cloud spend. Meanwhile, how's the workday being spent? 80% of it is messaging, chat, voice, and video, per the ProduScore Research Council. Time spent in these apps increased 100% year over year in 2020. And we clearly do not have an efficiency crisis. Year-over-year productivity levels exceeded 2019 numbers every month during 2020. Want to make it feel better? Here's an idea. Citigroup is now banning internal video calls on Fridays, designed to help set boundaries for healthier work-life balance. And while I'm reviewing the markets, Gartner thinks social software and collaboration will grow 17% in 2021 alone and another 14% in 2022. Now, why do we care? Shocking no one, cloud accelerated in the pandemic. This is more validation of what happened than the actual prediction. Let's look at the clearly growing market, collaboration. The story? Productivity is not suffering, but employees are spending the majority of their times in communication apps, and likely burning out over it. That's the real headline. All the data screams what we should be doing in IT services. Work with customers to make sure the technology is making their business outcomes better. It's not more, it's better. Let's look at the COVID-19 vaccine websites, because the markup did. The investigation measured accessibility and privacy protections, and the results aren't great. Nevada's ranked the worst on the privacy front, with Utah, New Jersey, and Hawaii also with poor results. Texas, New York, Kentucky, West Virginia, New Hampshire, and Puerto Rico all had no ad trackers or third-party cookies at all. On average, the sites had 2.8 ad trackers and 3.4 third-party cookies. Nevada also ranked poorly for performance. Most of the sites did perform well on accessibility, however. Now, why do we care? One might be inclined to be generous with these sites due to the timetables. Don't be. That's how security problems begin. You do it fast, not right. I'd make the argument that these are the places to really do it right. Why are we putting ad trackers on these sites anyway? Some implementer made the active decision to do that. Now we care because of the missed opportunity. Tech both have and had the opportunity to be part of the solution, and here instead is part of the problem. Each of these decisions comes at a cost, and has a cost in customer perception. You should care because you stand out from the crowd when you handle customer data differently. Privacy is becoming a feature. Remember that Arizona law that was going to regulate the Apple and Google app stores? It's gone. The vote never happened. And there's no explanation. Now, why do we care? This is a quick one. I talk a lot about regulation and discuss both pending and implemented legislation. We care because not everything happens. In this case, there's some discussion that there was a brokered deal to make this law go away. Lobbyists may have gotten involved. I'm not going down that rabbit hole. Instead, I'm highlighting that we care because what happens in legislatures matters. And there's a difference between something being proposed and debated and something implemented. Thanks for tuning in to This Week in the Business of Tech. Shows come out each week, pulling together the daily podcast. If you like this show, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. The content here is possible because of supporters like you. If you want access to shows early, answers to your questions, and private interactions, join our Patreon. It's pay what you want. You decide what the content is worth. Join at patreon.com/MSP Radio. Patreons also get access to the written versions of every story as they come out. If you want the stories right away, you can get them on the daily podcast. Find The Business of Tech on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your shows. Subscribe links at businessof.tech, and I'll talk to you again next week.